Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacey and Phil Thompson.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. My name is Phil Thompson, and my partner in crime, Steve Lacey, is not here today. Steve has got some things going on, some projects he's trying to get done, and he's actually going on vacation officially this weekend, so he's cramming to get a lot of little things done. Some little, some big, and so we're flying solo today with the podcast, but we're so glad that you've spent some time with us, or planning hopefully to spend a little bit of time with us here for the next half hour as we talk about tech-related things. We're a company, as you may or may not know, called JSL Solutions. We provide streaming video through StreamingChurch.tv. We have church websites and church management tools, myflock.com. And the other part of our company is called ChurchAppLive.com, which is mobile apps that we provide. And our goal is to really help churches use technology today to reach their community, to reach the world for that matter. And part of what we do on these podcasts are very much tech related, as you could probably figure, but also we talk a lot about other things to help enable you as a leader, as a pastor, as a volunteer to really, do what you do better. And Steve and I have had a ton of church experience, not just in the technical end, but also working with volunteers and leadership stuff. In fact, I'm still involved in leadership at a church I actually work for part-time as an executive pastor, do some speaking and do some leadership things with that church, and some of it's tech-related, some of it's volunteer-related. Well, you get the gist if you have any experience as a executive pastor. So, and I was a senior pastor. In fact, I was the second customer way back in 2001. My church, we started a church, and my church back then was the second customer of JSL Solutions with Steve. Steve and I go back a long ways even before that. And I'm happy to say that my church is still going back there in Kansas, and they still use JSL Solutions. So we've been around for a long time. And today we want to talk about some technical things related to streaming video. Streaming video has been around for a long time. But there are some basic things that you should know if you're having some problems, or if you happen to run into some issues with your live stream. Maybe you are not streaming live, but maybe you're thinking about it. This might be a good little podcast to listen to so that you know what you might be getting into if you decide to do streaming video. And if you are doing streaming video, maybe you've got some problems or you've had some issues. Perhaps this can shed some light on it and help you a little bit when it comes to streaming video. So streaming video is not overly complicated today, but there are a few things that we need to know when it comes to diagnosing some issues that you might be having. So usually the first impression people get is when they're having a problem. If you're heading up your streaming church deal, you're maybe a volunteer, you're on staff or something, and you're getting complaints, whether it might be Sunday morning or whatever, we're having buffering, we've got some video issues. The first reaction most people do is, okay, let's call our provider. And we're available, StreamingChurch.tv is available 24/7 basically. And so we get calls, and I understand that. Okay. In fact, I remember years ago, I was helping my church stream, and we were having some streaming issues, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was off the top of my head. So my first reaction was, I'm going to call StreamingChurch.tv. And as I went to pick up the phone, I realized, wait a minute, I'm calling myself. And I put the phone down and realized, okay, maybe I need to do some troubleshooting here very quickly before I call one of my server guys. And so what I did was I realized I did a speed test, an upload speed test at our church, and realized our internet, which was really very reliable at that time and very powerful and good, my internet had disappeared at my church. It was pretty much gone, and that's why I was having buffering issues and having some problems. So I don't blame you or fault you if you want to call your provider like us, but you might. Here's a few things you could do that could kind of maybe help you very quickly solve the problem. And chances are we're going to suggest this to you if you call us, because we have found over the years and years that we've been doing this, we have got some great reliable servers. Most of the time, the problem is going to be on the church's end, not on our end. We've had maybe a couple outages over the last, 5-6 years maybe for a few minutes, but for the most part, we're pretty reliable. Not saying it could never happen, but I have found that a lot of times the issue originates from the location, the church's location. So let me tell you why that is. Okay, first of all, it's usually related to the network, the internet, the internet service provider. And the way you can kind of tell that a lot of times is, most of the time, is by doing a speed test. So you can go to our website, StreamingChurch.tv, look under resources. There's a speed test you can use that goes directly to our servers. Or you can just go to speedtest.net, something like that. Just make sure they don't spam you. But you can do speedtest.net, and you can do a speed test. And I would do several speed tests to find out. In fact, here's my little nugget here that you might want to consider, nugget of wisdom maybe, if you want to call it that, is even before you stream, I would get there early enough and test your upload speed even before you stream. And then I would test it while you're streaming and see how things are going. Because again, what you're looking for is not the download speed. You're really looking for the upload speed and the quality of service. So test often and test it on the actual equipment from the actual location with the actual subject matter if possible. But whatever, if you can't totally do that with subject matter, at least do some additional testing while you're streaming and see how that goes. It's easy to panic. It's easy. Your hair's on fire. Something's going wrong. Maybe you're even having a big conference and there's people watching all over the world and suddenly, it's not working right. And so stay calm and check a few things here that we're going to go over with you here that could maybe help you with that. The other thing is you really want to know what your upload speed is on your live encoder. So you want to make sure, if you do a speed test, you want to make sure what the upload speed is, but also on your live encoder, what do you have it set at? What do you have your video set at? Because it needs to be at least, let's take, for instance, if you're just doing 500 kilobytes per second for your video, your upload speed should be over 1 meg. So you should be double what you're streaming at least. And that's as long as you don't have a ton of people on your Wi-Fi or on your network. So let me try to make this as clear as possible. So if you're streaming 500-600 kilobytes per second, maybe you're streaming 800 or 900 kilobytes per second, or 1,000, which is a 1 meg. Make sure that your upload speed, when you test it, it should be double of what that is. So if you're streaming 1 meg upload speed on your live encoder, then you should have at least 2 consistent upload, 2 megs upload on your if you take a speed test, just to gauge what it looks like. In fact, really you should have a little bit more, because bandwidth does change. It fluctuates, and especially if you have an open network. If you have a large church or you have several people for whatever reason downloading files on your Wi-Fi, it can slow things down, and it can cause buffering. It can cause problems. So I always recommend, if you're really serious about streaming, you might consider getting a different internet connection for streaming, or at least lock it down so that Sunday morning or Saturday night or whenever you do streaming, there's not a lot of people on your Wi-Fi. We've done podcasts here before, and we've encouraged people to have open Wi-Fi, but not if you're streaming. That could be a possible problem. So maybe you're getting away with it now. Good for you. I hope it's okay. But definitely keep that in mind, that your internet's going to fluctuate. And a lot of people don't realize that, depending on the users you have. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I think I mentioned this earlier, there was a golf tournament here in Tucson a few years ago, and this was back when Tiger Woods was Tiger Woods, and the networks would rob us of bandwidth. They would broadcast this thing, and somehow or another, our internet, which was usually really good, would kind of disappear every time during this year, during the golf tournament. We finally put 2 and 2 together. So bandwidth does fluctuate, and there's lots of things that can happen, and it can happen totally out of the blue. So just keep that in mind, and the way you can maybe solve that question would be take a speed test and take multiple speed tests. All right, so as we talk about streaming and ways to really deal with buffering issues and problems and really getting the most out of your live streaming, another factor that a lot of times people don't realize is the equipment you're using can have an effect on the quality of your stream. So let's start with your live encoder. If you're just getting into live streaming, a lot of people use Flash Media Live Encoder. Nothing wrong with that. It's a good live encoder, but Adobe is no longer upgrading that or doing much with it. And so it's good, especially for standard definition streaming. But if you want to do something more with it and add more to it, maybe you want to start doing HD streaming with it, usually not a good idea with Flash Media Live Encoder. Normally there's problems with either audio and video getting out of sync or some buffering. So I would not recommend using Flash Media Live Encoder if you're going to do high definition streaming. I know there's a few of our customers that do it and everything is good and people are happy with it. Awesome. Good for you. But for the most part, there tends to be a problem with high definition streaming with the Flash Media Live Encoder. What's the solution to that? Well, I would suggest a different encoder. Wirecast is a good option for HD streaming. I believe vMix is also an option out there. There's other things out there as well. And one of the most important things that people don't realize when it comes to your equipment and streaming issues is you want to make sure that your video capture device or your video capture card that you use specifically for streaming, pairs up well with the live encoder. So for instance, Wirecast, if you go to their website, Telestream, there is some specs out there and they will kind of recommend video capture cards or video capture devices that you're end up plugging your camera feed into or your switcher feed into. That device, you got to have something so that the live encoder recognizes the image. And so a lot of times there's problems because the video capture device it doesn't seem to work well for some reason. I've had some people, complain on those things. We've worked through some of those issues, and they found that they used a different device, and the problem went away. So, one of the best ways to make sure you don't go round and round is to check whatever live encoder you're using, see what they recommend. And again, the Flash Media Live Encoder, it's hard to get information on it. It's hard to talk to anybody in tech support with it because of what it is, and it's going away. But I have just simply found from experience that if you try to do HD streaming with it, with Blackmagic cards or different devices like that, sometimes you're asking for trouble. So if I can just be honest with you, know your equipment and make sure. And especially, here's another point too, is sometimes people change equipment during the week and everything that was working great, and then you put new equipment in, whatever it might be, switchers, video capture devices, or whatever, even cameras, and then all of a sudden, they did a quick little test, turned it on, yeah, it looks good, and then Sunday morning, all of a sudden, problems. So again, if you're going with new equipment, make sure you spend some time testing it and streaming with it and making sure that it's going to work more than just 2 or 3 minutes. Get what I'm saying? So there you go. So as we talk about this issue of streaming video today, a lot of times buffering occurs when there's a poor routing connection between the location of your live encoder and the server you are using, or the person that's providing the server. And like in our case, we provide servers. So check your upload speed. The speed test is a good way to do that. If you have good upload speed and things seem to be good, and you're still having buffering issues, and you've checked your equipment out, then there's a thing you can run called a ping tracer, which would trace the different nodes out there that the internet jumps through. The internet's kind of like a big spider web, there are all these different nodes out there that kind of hop all over the place. And sometimes when things are hopping, packet signals get lost or dropped, and somebody's got issues wherever they might be. And so sometimes there can be buffering and problems. And we can certainly provide you a ping tracer test and help you with that a little bit if you are pretty certain that it's not your equipment or it's not your internet where you're specifically at. So that's one thing you can do. And again, as I mentioned, upload speed's important. If you don't have a lot of upload speed on your speed test, you can always lower your bit rate on your live encoder, change your resolution a little bit lower. It's not that hard to do, and that can help as well. Another issue, though, when it comes to problems with streaming, and a lot of people don't realize this, and that is your computer, the CPU on your computer can be working overtime for various reasons, and when the CPU is running hot, in other words, when it's just the resources are being drained, it can slow things down on your live streaming, and you can get buffering and other issues involved in that. So I'd encourage you to occasionally, in fact, honestly, I would do it at least every time you stream, but check your CPU. Now, Mac has a different, it escapes me off the top of my head, but you can check your performance on your Mac, on your computer, on your PC. You can check your performance very easy. I think it's under CPU. I think Mac calls it something different. But again, if you're running, I don't know, 70% or higher on your CPU usage, you're asking for potential problems because you may have several programs opened, and I know there are churches that will put their streaming video. They run their live encoder, they'll run ProPresenter, they'll run something else, all on one computer, and it can slow things down and affect your streaming. So I would encourage you to check that and maybe get a different computer to run maybe some other programs that may be sucking your resources. Yes, you can always add more RAM, you can always add more memory, and that can help. And a lot of times, too, I have found that things can be working just great for somebody for a year, and then all of a sudden there's a problem. And it just comes out of the blue. It could be a virus-related thing. It could be your just computer's getting old. It could be things that you've never thought about that are affecting your stream, and it all has to do with the computer and the CPU and the computer. So keep that in mind when we're talking about having a live stream, problems and those kind of issues. It can be your upload speed, but it can also be your equipment issues, especially with your computer. It could be draining some things. And so as we move on here a little bit, there are some things that you should look at to really make sure your experience is good. And here's something too that I find that happens quite common, and that is the video may not be a problem, but the audio is a problem. And if your audio is a problem, quite frankly, it's a big problem because people will tolerate video that may not be crystal clear. The lighting may not be the best. The video may not be the sharpest. People will tolerate that. And as I said earlier, you don't need to really have high resolution video because a lot of people are watching on mobile devices, and doesn't have to be high resolution. But here's something people won't tolerate: audio issues. Because you can have great video, but if your audio is bad, people are not going to be sticking around very long. They're going to be leaving you because it's just annoying when there's bad audio. So one of the things I would strongly encourage you to do is listen to your audio during the live stream. So if you're on the other side of things here and you're the administrator, you're the streaming person there, make sure that you listen to your audio, at least in headphones or something. It's going to be a delay. Video's always going to be delayed. The live stream is going to be delayed maybe on your computer 7 to 10 seconds, could be a minute or more. So headphones would probably be good, but you want to make sure that audio is good. And that can change, especially a lot. That can change because many people are taking audio, it's going into their soundboard. They use the same soundboard to mix music in and stuff. And then it comes out and it goes into the computer either through the video capture device or maybe directly into the computer. But sometimes those levels get messed with on the mixing board. And so sometimes your audio, it was really good last week, and now for some reason it changed. Why did it change? Well, it could have changed for various reasons. Maybe somebody on the mixing board bumped it or moved it or something. And sometimes the connection isn't good depending on how you've done it. So really keep that in mind. Audio is very important when it comes to live video streaming because people want to be able to hear what's happening. So check that out. And if you need tips on this, as we're rambling on about some of this stuff, you need some help on this stuff, you can certainly call us or email us support@StreamingChurch.tv. We will certainly help you and try to deal with some troubleshooting there. We've as I've said, we've been doing this for a long time, and so there's a lot of things that we have come across over the years, and maybe we can help you with it. So audio is very important when it comes to having really good streaming video. So some tips here to keep in mind as we talk about this. Make sure you back up your, if you're saving your archives, which you probably should to some degree, at least to a certain point, I'd encourage you to back up your backups. I would definitely, we have a feature with StreamingChurch.tv called the DVR feature. And that DVR feature is really kind of cool because you can be streaming live, and when you're ready to capture your video as you're streaming live, you just click a button on your admin control button panel, and it will capture the live stream and send it up to the on-demand server at the same time that you're streaming live. And then when you're done, you just hit stop, and then you wait a couple minutes, go over to your admin control panel, and you can just kind of link things up, and you're done. Unfortunately, as we said earlier in this podcast, a lot of things kind of hinge on the internet. And so if you have a hiccup in your network at your church, it can corrupt that file that you're sending up to the on-demand server through the DVR feature. So I would always encourage you to save a copy on your hard drive, even if you're using a DVR feature. You can always get rid of it later on your hard drive, but I would save it. And Wirecast, every live encoder, I think, has that ability to save your file on your hard drive, and you can certainly use that and make sure you save it. And a lot of people save it anyhow. They do some post-editing, then they upload it later, either through FTP or through our admin control panel as well. But if you're using a DVR feature, make sure you back it up on your hard drive, the file, because again, the internet is a wonderful thing, but it's not perfect. And one of these days it will probably be near perfect with fiber optics and all the stuff going on eventually. But right now it's not. And so there are problems that pop up, and they're beyond everybody's control usually. And so you just have to kind of deal with it. But there are things you can do to back up your backups. And so I'd encourage you to back up a copy of your stream and make sure that you're all set with your file for that matter. So as we talk about streaming live, I want to encourage you to really look at some of these things that we talked about today and see if you can kind of get them maybe put them on a spreadsheet or some kind of a little bulletin, so that when you have people that are volunteering and working, they can check things like the speed test, and they can check their live encoder and make sure the upload speed is appropriate, and check on different things out there. Something else that when we're on the issue of streaming and dealing with your experiences, whether it be buffering or problems or whatever, is, if you're using Wi-Fi to stream with, you could have some potential problems eventually. And especially if it's open Wi-Fi, which means your other people in your church have access to your Wi-Fi, the internet at your location can have atrophy. It can shrink. It can go. It can change in the upload speed, and it can get smaller, so to speak, because when other people get on your network, it can shrink that down. So a couple things to keep in mind if you're doing live streaming, if at all possible, if you can hardwire your computer or your live encoder, if you can hardwire it to your network, that will make a big difference. And even better still, if you can kind of close your Wi-Fi to other people if you're streaming on that same network, that will help you as well. Now, in the past, we've done podcasts here, and we've encouraged people to have open Wi-Fi in their church because people are using mobile devices, and it's a great way to kind of connect and use those devices for your benefit. But if you're doing live streaming, that may not be such a good idea. So I would strongly encourage you to think around that a little bit. Church I was working with, they decided to get a different internet connection so that they had one internet connection strictly for streaming. And when they weren't streaming, the office people used it. But then there was another Wi-Fi connection that was open and people could use it. It was a separate network. So it didn't affect one or the other. And again, as we talk about live streaming, there's fluctuations in internet, and especially if you have open Wi-Fi. So keep that in mind. Check your live encoder performance. That's another thing you should strongly consider. I think it's Wirecast has kind of a CPU usage meter, which again will tell you if it's getting overworked. Flash Media Live Encoder has logs you can look at. We actually encourage a lot of people to check. There's an auto adjust setting on Flash Media Live Encoder you can use, and the encoder will actually adjust your upload speed if your bandwidth is shrinking at your network. But it also has logs that will tell you what's going on. And in fact, most encoders will. So when you're having some issues, buffering or whatever it is, a lot of times you can look at the logs on your live encoder. It will tell you if it's trying to make some adjustments or those kind of things. These little tips will help you when things are going wrong. If you can remember these things and write them down, they'll help you in the situation. Because, when you're doing a live conference or just a regular church service, lots of things are going on. We understand that. And when the internet goes down or when there's problems with your live stream, it's like your hair gets on fire. It's like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? And many times it's calling us, which is fine. You can do that. But we're going to tell you probably or suggest to you that you check some of these things we already talked about. If you can kind of keep these somewhere by your live stream, there's things that you could have people go through, like a checklist that will help them when it comes to their live encoder performance, their upload speed, what are they streaming at, and also monitoring the live stream. If you can monitor the live stream, through the StreamingChurch.tv platform or whoever's company you're using, that will help you as well. Obviously, there's going to be a delay, but you'll get an idea what the audio sounds like and what the video looks like as well from the viewer's perspective. I don't know. I hope that helps. It's streaming video is a great tool to use. We've seen churches grow by using it and doing it right. There's some other things you can do to we'll talk about sometime in the future that will help you get more viewers and those kind of things. But the bottom line is you want to really make sure you check some of these things we talked about here earlier, because you want a good experience for people. And if you can minimize the problems, you'll have more peace in your life during a service if you're the person in charge of this streaming stuff. And then people who on the other end will have a good experience and they will enjoy your service. So again, we're always available if we can help you in any way. Support at StreamingChurch.tv, or you can call our toll-free number 866-852-6648. Check us out on iTunes. We are there under Church Solutions Podcast. Give us a rating. Give us a review. We'd love to hear from you. We are also on YouTube. We have, just look for StreamingChurch.tv. We've got the audio version of this podcast on YouTube. One of these days we'll go back to putting some video on there. We've got video on there as well, but what we do right now with these things is audio only. And we're also on NewMediaMinistries.tv. NewMediaMinistries.tv. It's a little blog platform that tells you about some things happening. Got some new features coming up on StreamingChurch.tv you can read about as well. Which we think will be a benefit for you. So again, we exist to try to help you, to try to encourage you and help you with tech things as well as other areas of church stuff. And if we can help you in any way, please let us know. So Steve Lacey is gone. Well, he's not here. He's not gone yet. But for Steve, I'm Phil Thompson. And for all of us here at JSL Solutions, we hope that you have a great week and a great weekend. And we will catch you next time for another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.